The first game on this test was a sequencing game, an ordering game. We ordered things from left to right. This is really a mix of sequencing and grouping, and I'll show you what I mean. The items we're placing here, G, H, and L. So let's write them. G, H, L, and we'll do a nice underline. Shown on a festival held Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So let's write Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you can already see some sequencing, Thursday followed by Friday followed by Saturday. But these 3 days also serve as groups. What do I mean? So let's write a nice sort of wall here to isolate the groups. In theory, on each day, you could have 3 items. We haven't looked at the rules yet, but so far, you could have 3 different items. And within each group, we care about the order in which items appear from left to right. So this is really sequencing within sequencing. And you can think of each of the 3 days as groups. And what else did they say? Each item appears at least once. So G appears at least once somewhere. Likewise, H and L. It's not that they each have to appear on every single day. Each of them has to appear at least once during the festival. In a grouping game, one great question to ask yourself is, what's the maximum and what's the minimum? So far, and we haven't looked at the rules yet, so far it looks like the maximum is 3 on each day, and the minimum is 1. So you want to be aware of that. And I say 1 is the minimum because we are told that on each day, at least 1 film is shown. So you cannot have a day on which 0 films are shown. You have to have at least 1. So what we could do here on Thursday, let's put parentheses around 2 of these slots. Those are maybes. And likewise on Friday and Saturday. And again, we haven't looked at the rules yet, but Friday, Saturday, we'll put parentheses around these. Okay. So now let's take a look at the rules. And I'm going to switch colors here. Rule 1. On Thursday, H is shown and no film is shown after it on that day. So in our diagram, I'm going to write H and I'm also going to kind of bump it up against the wall, so to speak. H is shown and no one is shown after it. So that's rule 1. We can just write it in the diagram. I see no need to write it over here on our left-hand column. We'll just put it straight in the diagram. How about rule 2? Rule 2. On Friday, either G or L, but not both, and no film is shown after it on the day. So that's really 2 rules, either G or L, and it's the last film. So I could write here G/L. And the rule also says either G or L, but not both, which means what? We cannot have 3 films. It's either G or L, but it's not both of them. The max we could have on Friday, it looks like it's only 2 films. H is optional. So we'll put H underneath the parentheses. H may or may not appear. It's not required, but it's not prohibited either. H may or may not appear. And then how about rule 3? Very similar to rule 2. On Saturday, either G or H, but not both, and no film shown after it on that day. So the last film on Saturday, G, we'll write G/H, so it's G or H. They cannot both appear, so here again, you could only have at most two films on that day. And if there were another film, which one would it be? It would be L. So we'll write L under here. So as I said before, in a grouping game, you always want to ask what's the minimum number of items placed in each group and what's the maximum number of items. So I look at Thursday, the max is 3, but Friday and Saturday, the max is 2. The max is 2. And of course, the minimum is just 1, 1, and 1. Okay, so that's an important question to ask in a grouping game. In a sequencing game, a great question to ask is who could go first, who could go last. We talked about that in game 1. So I look here at Thursday, H may be by itself, there may be 2 items, there may be 3 items. Who could go last? Well, it has to be H. Who could go first? Well, if there are 2 items, it would be G or L. If there were 3 items, L or G. So that's your setup, then I should write. So rule 3, I'll write 3, but of course we just put that in the diagram. That's your setup. You want to spend 2 to 3 minutes putting this together. And this is a game, you want to get to a point where you can finish a game like this in about 9 minutes. The first game, always about 5 minutes. After that, the times can really vary for games 2 and 3 and 4. And it takes a while to get used to this. It takes 3, 4, 5 weeks to get really used to this. I recommend that you take 3 official practice tests untimed, just to get used to the thinking. And then take another 10 tests under timed conditions. So now we'll underline the master sketch. You want to avoid touching the master sketch as much as you possibly can. Oh, and just another comment on who could go first, who could go last. Well, on Thursday, the first item could be L or G. The first item could also be H. Maybe H is the only film shown on Thursday. On Friday, the first item, it could be H, but it could also just be G or L. There could be only 1 film on Friday. And Saturday, similar story. The first item, it could be L, or it could just be G or H. Let's take a look at question 6. This is called the acceptable situation question. This is almost always the first question on a logic game. And the question is really, which of these 5 choices does not violate any rules? That's really what the question is. The way to handle this is to go rule by rule. So let's start with rule 1. On Thursday, H is shown and no film after that. So let's see, I look at answer A. Yes, H is shown and it is the last film. Okay, how about B? On Thursday, H is shown and it's the only film, so that's fine. Answer C, same story. But answer D, H is shown, but it is not the last film. So D is out, so I'm going to cross it out and I'm going to write that that was rule 1 that got rid of D. Now we'll jump to rule 2. On Friday, either G or L, but not both, and it's the last film shown. So I look at A. On Friday, L is shown, and it's the last film because no other film is shown, so that's absolutely fine. How about B? On Friday, L is the last film, but that's only part of the rule. The second part of the rule is that G and L cannot both be shown, and here G appears on Friday. So, B is gone. So rule 2 gets rid of B. Now you have to get rid of 4 answer choices, and there are only 3 rules. So one rule is going to have to get rid of 2 answer choices. So we got rid of B, but let's continue with rule 2, see if it gets rid of anybody else. I look at C. Friday ends with L, and G does not appear, so that's fine. How about E? Let's see if we can get rid of E. Friday, Limelight, then Harvest, and that violates our rule. Last film on Friday has to be G or L, so E is gone. Rule 2 gets rid of E as well. And let's take a look at rule 3. On Saturday, last film is either G or H, and the other is not shown. So I look at A again. Last film is H, so that's fine. I look at C. Last film on Saturday is G, so that's fine. So that's interesting. Rule 3 doesn't get rid of anything. And sometimes you see that. Sometimes a rule doesn't get rid of anything. It's pretty rare. Usually you have 4 rules. You apply each rule. You get rid of 4 answer choices. But that's not always the case. So you say, now what do I do? Well, the thing to do now is look at the passage we started with. You could call it the stimulus. A lot of people call it the stimulus. Anything in the stimulus also has to be true. The correct answer has to comply with anything that's said in the stimulus. So go ahead and reread the stimulus. See if one of the answer choices, A or C, fails to comply with everything that's said in the stimulus. We're told that each film is shown at least once during the festival. So you look at A, Limelight, Harvest, Limelight, Harvest, G does not appear, A is out, the answer is C. It is a good idea, certainly on the tests that you take untimed, and I would recommend that you continue to do this on the first 5 tests that you take under timed conditions. I recommend that you write out the correct answer, literally write it out, and I'll show you why. So this is question 6. It's a good idea to write the question number. I look at answer C, Harvest and only Harvest, so we'll put that there. Friday, Limelight and only Limelight, we'll put that there. And Saturday, it ends with G, and Limelight also appears before G. The reason to write it out is so that you can take a few seconds and review the rules to become more familiar with them. So I look at the rules in the diagram. I start with Thursday. H has to be last, and yup, H is last. Other films are optional and they don't appear, and that's absolutely fine. I look at Friday. The last film has to be either G or L, and yup, it's L. H is optional. It doesn't appear, but that's fine. And then Saturday ends with either G or H. Yup, it ends with G. L is optional, and here L does appear. And you just have a better sense of the rules. That's going to make it easier to answer other questions correctly. Now let's take a look at question 7. Which of the following cannot be true? Cannot be true. The problem here is that we don't get any details at all. So this question, maybe it's easy, maybe it's hard. If you get a question that doesn't give you any details at all in the question itself, it's a good idea to come back to that question and do it at the end. So we're actually going to jump to question 8. If L is never shown again once G is shown, we want to know the maximum number of film showings. So what do we have here? If L is never shown again after G is shown, what's the maximum number of film showings that there could be? Well, let's reason our way through this. And here I'm gonna underline this. I'll bring down what we have from the master sketch. Suppose G were the first film on Thursday. Well, according to what we're told in question 8, L could never be shown. Well, in order to maximize the number of films, we want to show L as many times as we possibly can. That being the case, where do you want to put the first G? And once you place it, what's the maximum number of films you could show over this 3-day period? I'll let you think about this and then take a look at the answer choices. If I want to maximize the number of films, I'm going to put G last on Saturday. So let's write it over here. G is last. That's how you can maximize the number of L's. And now let's do that. We'll start with Saturday and work our way backwards. So Saturday, L could be the first film on Saturday. I look at Friday. According to our master sketch, L could appear on Friday. Could be the last film, so we'll write it in there. I look at Friday. H could appear. Again, we want as many films as possible for this particular question. I look at Thursday. L could appear there. So as long as we place G last, you could have as many as 6 films. So answer D. Now, one point before we jump to the next question. This information here, This is not a new rule that applies to every question. This is information that applies only to this question. It's not a new rule that applies everywhere. It only applies to this question. We can forget about it when we look at the questions that follow. Let's look at question 9. Now, since I'm running out of room here, I'm going to erase some of this. But of course, when you take the test, you don't want to erase anything. Why? Because this is valuable information that could potentially help you with future questions. But in any event, let's do question 9, and I'm going to write 9 here. And I'm going to bring down what we have in the master sketch. We know that H is the last film on Thursday. Okay, so let's look at the details they give us in question 9. G is shown 3 times. So it's going to be on Thursday. It's going to be the last film on Friday. And it's also going to be the last film on Saturday. G 3 times. What else do we have? H is shown exactly twice. Well, it's shown once on Thursday. We know that. According to the master sketch, it could be on Friday. So it could be here. Could our second H be on Saturday instead of Friday? Well, no, because we already placed the G. So H is definitely on Friday. And then what does it say? L once. Now, where could L go? Why don't I write it here and circle it? L, it could be on Thursday. But according to the master sketch, it could also be. So with that in mind, take a look at the answer choices. What absolutely must be true is E. H and G both on Friday. What you want to be aware of here is that some questions ask you what must be true. Some ask simply what could be true, not a must be, but a could be. And some questions, we saw one earlier, we're going to come back to it, ask you what cannot be true, what absolutely cannot be true. It's really important to pay close attention to those words. Is it a must be true? Is it a could be true? Is it a cannot be true? If this question, for example, had asked what could be true, well, then the correct answer, what? It's going to involve L. We know where everybody else must go. The only thing we're not certain about is where L goes. So if it were a different question, if it asked what could be true, the placement of L is not certain, so the answer would involve L. Let's look at question 10. So I'm going to bring down some information from the master sketch. We'll label this question 10. If L is shown 3 times, so it would be on Thursday, it would be the last film on Friday, and it would be the optional film on Saturday. And then what? And I'll switch colors again. The second H, we know the first one is on Thursday. The second H, either it's on Friday or it's the last film on Saturday. Let's create 2 little mini diagrams. So I'll bring down what we had above. You want to do this quite a lot, actually. First little diagram, our second H is on Friday. Second diagram, our second H is on Saturday. Okay, what else are we told? G is shown once. Well, in our first little diagram, G would be when? It would be on Saturday, the last film on Saturday. In the second diagram, where would G go? Well, we know it can't be on Friday because the last film is either G or L, but the other one can't appear. So it would go on Thursday. All right, just take a quick look at the choices. First film on Thursday could be either L or G. So answer E as in echo. So now we have a really good sense of arrangements that are okay, arrangements that are not okay. Now we'll go back to the question that gave us no details at all. We're back to question 7 now. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're not. I'll pause for a moment and let you take a look at the answer choices. Turns out that this one is pretty easy. Answer A. H cannot be the last film on each day. We know it is the last film on Thursday, but it can't be the last film on Friday. Can be the last film on Saturday, but definitely not on Friday, so answer A. So once again, this game had elements of both grouping and sequencing. The last game, game number 1, was strictly sequencing. The next game, which I encourage you to check out right now, game 3, is also a sequencing game. So take a look at that game. If you have any questions at all, just leave them in the comments section and I will reply. If you found the video helpful, please click the like button. We'll see you in the next video.